The tariffs that were levied by Washington, led, of course, by President Trump, is a moving target. From one day to the next, we really are not sure exactly what's going to happen. I wrote a piece in China Daily after the first announcement of the tariffs, and I put a sentence in there saying, I can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Now, when you use the phrase, I can't predict what's happening tomorrow, that's sort of a generality phrase means I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I said, no, I mean, I don't literally know what's going to happen literally tomorrow. And that's what we've seen over the last few days. Again, it's a moving target. Literally just today, Trump eliminated the tariffs from China or any place on smartphones and computers and electronic equipment. So it's a kind of a constant uncertainty. But Americans in general do not like it. But there's not a great groundswell among Americans in terms of their approach. There are many Americans who support President Trump very strongly, who, even though they're negatively affected, still support him. What percentage of America is that sort of hardcore Trump base? I would have to guess in the middle 30s, 30, 35%, something like that, very strongly supportive. Um, Among the elites in the United States, because if you have totally no restrictions on a developing country's industries, the multinationals will come in and undercut and certainly better quality. And so it'll be a permanent dependency where developing countries will have on developed countries. And everybody recognizes that as wrong. So therefore, developing countries have certain rights and privileges to levy tariffs or other kinds of restrictions. And China had that advantage. Well, fast forward now, 24 years. China has been the greatest economic success story continuously in human history. It's the second largest economy, eliminated extreme poverty several years ago, 2020, is the manufacturing hub of the world, high technology in many areas, still not world class in every area by any means. So the situation is very different now with China. And so that's a point that Trump has that he's correct about. But it's not that China has been ripping off the United States. That was part of the plan. And that should be the plan for all sorts of countries to develop in their own way. And so, although 90% of the elites, say in the United States, elites meaning business leaders, academics, think tanks, even senators and congressmen, do not support the tariffs. The Republican Party has a complex picture because Trump does dominate their base. The Chinese miracle was built on their backs, and China recognizes that. And therefore, China has to make its products go up the value chain. So you have a higher gross margin. When you're making, I don't know, computer keyboards or socks, there's one city in China that makes half the world's socks. The margins are so thin, and therefore workers have to be paid a very low amount. Um, but as those workers demand more wages, which they rightly should, you can't make socks anymore because the gross margin is not there. But I'd also make the point that it's really not good for the United States to have those manufacturing jobs come back because what that will do is that will take away from the great strength of the United States, which is the innovation of new technologies, investment in new things, attracting the world's most dynamic and risk-taking individuals from countries across the world, from Asia and Africa, China, every place, come to the U.S. because the opportunities for education and the environment of risk taking and venture capital, and that's what the U.S. should be doing more of. Now, in the process, you have millions of American workers who can't be trained to become computer programmers. China's reaction to all American, what they would interpret as attacks on China or tariffs or ways of containing or restraining China, they have to respond in some way. China has always been a very proud country, but right now China is saying, "Look, we've now matched your 125 or whatever it is, but they're with their 84%." And China's announced that we're not going to play this game anymore. No matter what you do, you can raise it. Doesn't matter. We're not raising ours anymore. Now, that's a very positive statement. It's not as significant as it may sound because China doesn't have doesn't have the capacity because the American goods into China are so much less than Chinese goods to America. And so the experience that China has had across a broad front in infrastructure development, in healthcare, education, in rural areas, can be applied. Now, it's a mistake to say that, in my opinion, that the China model is something that other countries can utilize because the China model, at least so far, is superb for China. But it is not applicable directly in other countries. Other countries, different histories, cultural experiences, economic resources, political structure, everything is different. And so, what other countries can do is to learn how China operates and how it has accomplished its role. In terms of China's domestic market, the tariffs come at the worst time because China's economy broadly has been struggling. Now, it's not struggling compared to many other countries in the world, but in terms of what China has come to expect, it has been struggling. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing today that President Trump reversed tariffs on smartphones, computers, various electronic equipment because he's been told the impact of the stock market, people close to him, that's negative. You have to look at it country by country. I think all the countries in the world want to figure out a way how to mitigate or reduce the tariffs significantly, and are trying to find ways to do it. India is another case where America's put tariffs, and India's what the U.S. is looking to be a part of a bulwark against Chinese expansion. Whether that's right or not is a different subject. So the U.S. wants India to be part of well, the Quad is the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia, and that is a sort of not a defense pact, but it's a mutual sense of working together and working together for what? Well, the only thing that is working together is to thwart what they believe to be China's expansionist ambitions. And so the U.S. in the same time that wants India as part of a U.S. system, wants it less dependent upon Russian military equipment, which it needs to be because Russia, not, has used up much of its own equipment and can't afford more. And so America wants to be the supplier of India and to have India be part of a sort of an American quasi-alliance, not a real alliance, quasi-alliance. At the same time, putting a tariff on India. There's an expression in China that is a nickname for Trump, and it's Jian Guo. And so Jian means build, and Guo means country, like Zhonghua is the Chinese name for China. And so Trump's name in China, nickname, is build the country. And by that they mean build the Chinese country, because what Trump does is alienate American allies. And he did that in his first term. The major achievement from the Biden administration point of view, we barely talk about the Biden administration anymore as though it didn't exist. But they built allied relationships very much stronger in Asia with Japan and South Korea, India, Australia, UK, European countries. And Trump is sort of exploding that with his tariffs. To start with Canada and Mexico, two of the most peaceful borders in the entire world, it is an exemplary of Trump's willingness to be extremely disruptive, and then change back and forth, and they made some kind of a deal, and still somewhat in flux. So bottom line is that China will benefit ultimately by Trump's tariffs, by other countries needing China's relationship, which is at this point more stable than the U.S. in terms of everything. Its political leadership, its economic policies is more stable.